Welcome back, everybody. This is Breath Mutant here. Today we are studying our Magus spell videos. This is one of three. Today we're going to cover cantrips all the way to level 2. This is specifically because of these two mods, Eldritch Arcana and Call of the Wild mods. So this is, again, for people with PC. It's not to say that you won't find information here that would be useful for those of you playing on console. But since we're covering new spells as well as the old spells, it's really about the new spells more than anything else. What they add, what I think about them, things of this nature. We're going to do this like we did with the War Priest videos. So again, 3 separate videos, 0 to 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6 level spells after the very end. This will not actually include all the Magus spells, which sounds a little weird because it sounds like I'm covering them all. It is covering all the ones that any Magus can get. It's not covering the ones that are unique. For example, this mod, Call of the Wild, has a couple different classes, subclasses as well. And one of those subclasses, for example, has the ability to pick a druid spell, I think from level 1 through 6, or maybe even level 0 through 6. But they get them for free as they level up. And again, I'm not covering the druid spells. That's something that we'll do later. So this would be a good way for you to get your toes wet, so to speak, on the various Magus spells, but not everything that they would have access to, depending on which one you picked. Also, another example would be Eldritch Scion, for those of you playing the vanilla version of the game. Certainly these mods don't change this, but you get the Eldritch Scion builds have bloodlines. Those bloodlines give free spells from level 1 through 6, much like a sorcerer does. And those spells may be something that would be covered by a wizard, or something that would be covered by a cleric. And again, I'm not going over all those until we, again, cover the clerics, the wizards, the druids, things of this nature. Other example, last example I suppose I should say, would be all Magus, with the exception of one subclass, I think, has the ability, actually all classes now, thanks to these mods, have the ability to get, basically purchase, if you will, another wizard spell or 2, depending on which pick they go with. That literally opens their spell book up to even more spells again. So again, we're not covering everything because I know when I get to the wizards will cover that stuff, so I'm not particularly worried. So know that this covers quite a bit, but not everything. So let's actually start. So we're going to talk about cantrips first. Notice that we have a code that I use. I've done this in the War Priest videos, but if you didn't watch that, nothing wrong with that. But I highly encourage you to do so. It's the same coding system. So I have the school in one alphabet letter dictating what school it comes from. So capital C for conjuration, capital N for necromancy, V is for evocation, and that's because E was already taken for enchantment. Again, we have lowercase t for transmutation, capital I for illusion, D for divination, A for abjuration. And you may wonder why the lowercase t. It's because when I write these videos, I actually scribble all this stuff down on a notepad, and a capital T in my scribble scratch kind of looks like a capital I sometimes. So if I want to keep things clear, a lowercase t is pretty obvious what it is. Even if it looks like a plus in my chicken scratch, I know it's still not a capital I, so I know what I'm looking at there. So that's why I do that. Also, you'll notice that I have some spells underlined and some spells have an asterisk at the end of the spell name. That is another code that I use. Underlined means there's a saving throw or something similar. It could be something as simple as an athletics check to get out of a web spell, but basically something that negates the spell or overcomes the spell in some way. So again, that kind of leads me to know that this is more important. I should be paying attention to this type of spell. The one with the asterisk is referring to the fact that this particular spell has no spell resistance, which is extremely important because, again, if you're trying to penetrate somebody's spell resistance in the higher content of the game, you can be surprised, even with a solid character that knows what they're doing, that doesn't dip so their caster level is right on par where it should be, they're still having trouble landing blows with spells because of high spell resistance in some of the baddies. So something like Acid Splash, while not extremely powerful, can be made extremely powerful a variety of different ways, and as such, it draws my attention to it, and that's why I use the asterisk. Notice below, this is just another reminder, just like we did with the War Priest videos, that the spells can be modified using meta magics or meta magic feats or meta magic rods, so it depends on which one we're talking about, but basically they're all the same as far as what they do. They're all different. So we have the vanilla version listed here, as well as the new versions coming from these two mods. If they're underlined, they're new versions. So these aren't ones that you would have access to, for example, on console. And they're very cool. They're very interesting ways of doing things. One that draws my attention specifically for Magus is the Intensify meta magic was something that was missing And when I got onto the forums, when I would try to research what a Magus does and what's a good build, and when I was early playing this game, I found people were really pissed off on the forums because the game did not have the intensified meta magic feat, and that they said was the crux of being a really good Magus. And now that I see what it does, I understand what they meant. A Magus, for those of you that don't know, can channel a touch attack, usually a melee touch attack, but not always, through their weapon. That melee weapon, when it strikes, then it discharges the spell along with the attack of the weapon, of course. And if the weapon crits, the spell crits. So again, you can see the appeal. Normal meta touch attacks in general only crit on a nat 20. You can, of course, get a feat that allows you to get improved critical for it, so it crits on a 19 and 20, but that's silly. But now if you have a weapon that you channel it through, and that weapon crits on a 18, 19, and 20, or if you make it a keen weapon and make it crit on a 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, you can see the appeal. The chances that it crits is extremely high. Well, that's awesome, but that has nothing to do with the intensified meta magic, right? No, it doesn't. But the intensified meta magic, what it does is it raises the caster level cap of certain spells. We'll take the staple Shocking Grasp. This is a typical Magus spell, something that they would channel through their weapon. It does 1d6 of damage per caster level, but it caps out at level 5. So if you're level 5 or higher, you're never getting better than 5d6, unless of course it crits, or the weapon allows it to crit through the weapon, and then it doubles the damage. But still 5d6, then best case scenario is 10d6 when it crits. Now, if you take Intensify to that, it raises it a caster level, or a spell slot level, excuse me. So instead of it being a level 1 spell, now it's level 2. But for doing so, it raises that cap. Remember, we said the cap was 5 levels. So at level 5 and above, it doesn't matter if you're 5, 6, 20, you're still only doing 5d6 of damage. Well, if you use the intensified version and you happen to be level 10 or higher, 5 levels above level 5 is 10, then it can do 10d6 of damage. So it builds into it. So it starts out at 5d6 at level 5. If you intensify it, then it can be now 66, 76, and all the way up to 10d6 by the time you get to level 10 or higher. That's why people swear by it, and it really is very powerful. And again, it's only 1 spell slot higher. Now, because of course a weapon can crit, and the spell channeled through it can crit like Shocking Grasp, even an intensified version gets double damage. So now imagine a level 2 spell that not only did you smack the guy in the face with your scimitar, for a fine example of a good weapon for Magus, now it does, instead of 10d6 of damage, because it crit, it does 20d6 of damage. That's freaking huge. And that's why people were pissed. And it's not that it was broken. It's not that the game was missing it so badly that, oh my god, Magus all suck. Magus are fine. But having these mods bring that stuff back, I can see why people were upset, because it really is iconic for the class. Another example of stuff that you want to know about the meta magics are that they have level shifts, as we talked about. Where intensified, a level 1 spell becomes level 2 if you intensify it or use any of these other ones. And they are additive, so if I intensify and reach it, that's a +1 and another +1. Now a level 1 spell will be level 3 spell. Notice that some of these higher ones you can get. Heighten has a variable component to it, so you can make it a +1 all the way up to a +8 levels higher, but not 9, because you can't cast level 10 spells. Anyone can't. But the problem with us as Magus are, we can't cast anything above level 6. So for example, using Quicken, I don't mind the meta magic feat, but for us it's really not our cup of tea. And here's why. It would only allow us to quicken a level 1 or a level 2 spell, because level 1 would become level 5, a level 2 would become level 6. There's ways around that to make it a little bit better, so you can get all the way up to like level 3 spells, but it's still pretty bad. And it's very pricey. When we're talking about you burning up a level 6 spell slot or level 5 spell slot just to do, like shield spell, magic missile on the fly, because that's all it does, is it casts the spell as a swift action at that point. And that's not to say that that's inconsequential, it's just there's better ways to do it. How would you do better ways? Well, meta magic rods being another fine example. And the good news is the modders for this game have decided to add these meta magic rods, are the ones that are underlined. So when you can get extend meta magic rods, you can actually find intensified too. So that's pretty cool. So it's a way for you to like dip your toe, if you will, into the meta magic pool without actually giving yourself fits and migraines over why can't I make really cool spells awesome. With meta magic rods, you can make any of your spells awesome, which is pretty freaking sweet. So let's talk about the individual cantrips as we go through this. Acid Splash, what is it good for? It is a ray spell, or I'll refer to this all the time, but it's basically the same as saying a ranged touch attack spell. Same difference. Ray spells are great because there's a to hit check. While that means they could miss, that also means that they could hit, they could also crit, and because there's a to hit check, they can sneak attack if you have the ability to do so. Magus normally don't, but there's a mod that gives us a trait that gives us a little bit of sneak attack, and there's a spell in the game already that gives us the ability to do sneak attacks. And of course, even if you're not a purist Magus, you could actually dip your toe into Rogue or Alchemist, Vivisection specifically, or any number of other classes or subclasses that give you sneak attack die. So it is important to mention it because that is actually a lot more powerful than you think. Because 1d3 of damage is lame, but 1d3 of damage plus 5d6 sneak attack damage on top of it of acid damage is pretty fucking baller. And an infinite use cantrip like this really sees some good uses. Not only is this an amazing spell because of that, but it's also amazing because it has no spell resistance. This is one of your only cantrips that has that ability. So if you're having, again, guys that are resistant to your magic because they have a high SR, this is the one that can actually get around that problem, which is really, really nice. So this one always makes the cut. It's not, they have to worry about it because they just give it to you for free. Because it's a ray spell or a ranged touch attack, this is the unique feature of the Eldritch Archers. Remember I said that most of the Magus can actually channel melee touch attacks through their melee weapon. Eldritch Archers are the exception to the rule. They're the ones that can actually channel ray spells or ranged touch attacks through their ranged weapon. Whatever ranged weapon they have. It can be a dart, it can be a crossbow, it can be a sling staff, it can be anything that they can throw with the exception, I believe, of bombs. They can actually channel ray spells through it. Same principle. When the ranged weapon hits, the spell gets discharged. It's very cool. This mod is actually added, or Call of the Wild, I should distinguish between the two, has added even another unique trait to Eldritch Archers. There is a Magus Arcana, a special upgrade for them, that allows them, if they pick it, to even now use melee touch attacks to channel through their weapon, which is total bogus bullshit. It's cool for the Eldritch Archers. I shouldn't bitch because I'm going to play one. But it is one that it kind of screws over all the other Magus, which kind of sucks. Because now they can use like Shocking Grasp, Corrosive Touch, Vampiric Touch through their bow. You dicks. It is cool though. So I thought I'd mention that. It doesn't actually work on all the touch attacks, and it's kind of weird because the touch attacks that it should work on were added by the same modder, and it doesn't work for them. So again, I'll point you in the direction of that. The last thing to point out here is while it can miss, there is this really cool trick you can use with Meta Magic Rods. If you use a Quicken Meta Magic Rod, they have like limited charges a day. 3 is the typical, but not all are the same. So there's 3 different types of Quicken Meta Magic Rods called Quicken Meta Magic Rods. There's the Lesser, which casts it for level spells. It says 1 through 3. It's actually 0 through 3. There's the normal one that says Quicken Meta Magic Rod. That's levels 0 through 6. And of course, there's the Greater Quicken Meta Magic Rod, and that does 0 through 9. Now, of course, we don't have level 7, 8, or 9 spells, so who cares? Well, you care, because you can still use it for any of the spells level 6 on down, including cantrips. Well, the trick with a cantrip is, because it's level 0, if you use your rod, basically it's a toggle you turn on, cast this spell, which makes it a swift action instead of a standard action, it does not use up a charge from that rod. Remember I said they had 3 uses a day? That's precious. Well, now this can make it infinite. As long as it has 1 charge, and always at least 1 charge, you'll have the ability to cast this cantrip, or any other cantrip for that matter, as a swift action, and it does not use up the charge. Clearly that's a glitch. I don't care. I'm going to use that glitch, because that's fucking cool. And while you may say, well, it's only 1d3 of damage, remember, crits and sneak attack are applicable here. And remind you on some things here for the crits and the sneak attack. The sneak attack only works for this part, if it's a ray spell, if we're actually shooting it with Acid Splash. If we channel it through our weapon, any weapon, the crit works, because when the weapon crits, it crits. But the sneak attack only works on the weapon, not the ray spell being channeled through it. Same with any melee touch attack, same principle here. So in case I forget to point that out, know that that's for all of them. So only if you're using it as a ray spell or a melee touch attack for the other ones, will it get the ability to do sneak attack damage. And that's still cool, because that sneak attack damage can get big. Even on a purist build, the best I think I can get you, let's say I know I can get you to 6d6 plus 6, and probably another 1, 2, maybe 3 die extra. And of course that's using spells and gear and a trait, but so what? If I do that, I can get you, let's just say 8d6 plus 8 damage on a sneak attack. Remember, this does 1d3 as a swift action through this meta magic rod, and it still allows me to cast a spell or swing my weapon and all that fun jazz besides. That's fucking cool. But now that 1d3 seems lame, but now add an 8d6 plus 8 to it. Tell me that don't sound appealing. And still being able to follow up with another spell, maybe even the same damn spell. So again, on you, but this is a really cool trick, and I thought I'd point that out to you guys. Daze. This one's okay. Daze is one of the ones that it has an HD cap. After they get to level 5 or a 5 HD monster, they're immune anymore. A typical use for this would be to get it on a couple characters like, say, Lindsay, Octavia, and do what we call a daze chain, where you're literally just picking a target, picking another target, picking a target, and then just dazing all over the place, trying to get it to land. And if it does, they become dazed. And again, if they become dazed, they literally don't do anything. For one round, the bad guy literally just stands there. They can defend themselves, so they're not stunned. So they don't lose it, have penalty to armor class or susceptible to anything other than a normal attack. But they will not attack. And it literally gives you some breathing room. So a couple people daisy chaining this stuff, literally knocking down a couple of guys, dazing a couple of guys so that they don't do anything in the next combat round is extremely valuable at early levels. After a while, it becomes garbage. And again, it's not something that we're going to invest in because this is one of the only enchantments a true Magus gets, if you're a purist. If you pick it, if you get it free as an older Scion bloodline spell or anything like that, that's different. But this one is the only enchantment spell you naturally get. So you're probably not going to be spell-focused enchantment, for example. So again, you're going to be pretty weak at it, and it is a proper save or suck spell. So literally, if they make their check, nothing happens. If they get hit by it, notice that it only affects them for one round, and they're immune to the effects of the spell then for another goddamn minute. So it's not like you're going to be dazing some more with your team to lock down one guy. No, eventually he's going to break out of it. So rush over there after you daze him and finish him off, or capitalize on the fact that he's not doing anything by getting everyone out to kill somebody else that is a threat. However you want to do it. Light spell. This is something we talked about in the War Priest videos, but just to remember, while this is an amazing spell just for the ability to light up an area to see your characters and fun stuff like that, this game actually does not have penalties for being in the dark, which is, I think, a colossal mistake. And while I can say, well, maybe it was difficult, there's modders that have made it, and I think this is called Wild Mod as one example, where if you play a half-orc, they actually have a light sensitivity to being in the light. So a penalty to their swing, probably to their perception as well. And if they can do that, why can't you do the reverse, where humans or people that don't have low light vision or enhanced senses or whatever, if they're not in a light source, the bad guy has concealment, or you have a penalty to your swing, or whatever. Surely it can be done, is my point. And if you guys have the ear of the developers, because they're making a sequel to this game, by the way, for those of you that don't know, Wrath of the Righteous has met its Kickstarter goals and then some, and they're extremely pleased, and they're making a follow-up game to this. It's not using these same characters as a different kingdom, blah blah blah, but it's gonna be cool. You gotta know that. And I hope and pray that they literally take advice like this to heart. Please instrument some sort of penalty for being in the dark. Not having a torch, not having a light, and being a human is still a stupid idea. So the fact that I can walk through a cavern without seeing anything, still being able to hit all the bad guys, and still finding all the hidden loot, seems weird, right? It's the reason that being human sucks, because humans are friggin' OP otherwise. So having a light cantrip, poof, solves that problem, at least within a 20-foot radius or whatever. That's still cool, and I think they should be able to implement that. Other than that, though, this spell does what it's supposed to do, and it's nothing particularly fancy. Ray of Frost. This is your second of 3 cantrips that have ray spells that do damage. Ray of Frost, just like the other one, Acid Splash, it can hit, it can miss, it can crit, it can sneak attack if it's the ray spell itself. It can be channeled through a ranged weapon attack if you're an Eldritch Archer and you're level 2 and using the proper toggles. It can use that same Quicken Magic Rod trick we talked about, but other than that, it's basically the same, with the one exception of it's cold damage versus acid, and the other exception that it doesn't have spell resistance, the other one did not. Other than that, it's exactly the same spell. Touch of Fatigue. This one's nice. This is the only cantrip you have as a Magus, a traditional Magus that channels through their melee weapon. This is your only melee touch attack that you have infinite use of. So this one, you may say, well, it doesn't do any damage, so why even care? Well, remember, if you channel through your weapon, and then fire your weapon. That's giving you a free attack. Not just the fact that it's delivering touch fatigue. No, I mean your weapon, your swing of your sword, for example, is going to hit twice now at level 2 instead of once. Because you channel your spell, you swing your sword to try to deliver the weapon, or the spell through the weapon, and then you swing with your natural weapon swing after that. So that's 2 attacks at level 2. If you're an Eldritch Archer, using the aforementioned Ray of Frost and Acid Splash and another one coming up, you can shoot through your bow at level 2. If you had already picked up, say, Rapid Shot, you can now get 2 attacks thanks to that, and you, of course, channel the spell, now you get 3 attacks. So you can shoot 3 damn times at level 2 with that bow. Yes, you're at a penalty to your swing, but 3 attacks? Hell yeah, I'll take that shot. That's pretty sweet. And again, that's power. Same general principle here. This is why you want an infinite use cantrip like this. Okay, it's not amazing in any stretch of the imagination, and even when it fails, who cares? It still allows you to swing your weapon an extra time. That's really the selling point here. And when it does work, you'll appreciate it. It's a fatigue effect for a decent amount of time. It's kind of lackluster at the beginning, but it, again, rapidly levels up. But it's a penalty by 2 to strength and dex of the target if they fail, as it is a save or suck spell. Having said all that, this can hit, miss, and crit. The crit doesn't do anything, so we're clear on that. You don't get suddenly more strength and dex penalty by critting it. It will make it sound like it does, but it critted. So what? Doesn't do anything because it didn't do any damage. Critting is only for damage potential. Usually. There's one exception to that coming up. But by and large, this is useful because not only is that penalty to strength and dex mean that they're less likely to hit you and your team, they have weaker armor more likely than not, they have worse reflexes, which is awesome. It also allows you to set up other spells that use fatigue to make a target exhausted, which is even worse. That's a nonsense of -2/-2. It's a -6/-6 to strength and dex. And it's not additive. It just jumps up now to -6. But that's huge. And while you may think, well, okay, but who really cares? I mean, if it's a fighter, they're probably going to be super tough, super dex. And, yeah, fatigue is okay. Definitely exhaustion. You can understand the appeal. It will not cause a target to become exhausted. It just sets up fatigue on the target, which means another spell can come in and set up exhaustion. So by itself, it's still kind of, who gives a shit? Well, you do. Well, not only do we get the extra attack, let's say you use it against a caster type, someone in the back, like a wizard or sorcerer. They don't die from your initial hit, maybe, but they get fatigue because their fortitude saves pretty much suck. So they have -2 to strength. They don't care. They have a -2 to dex. They do care about that. It's easier to hit them. Their reflexes are now worse. And the chances that they're going to use a dex-based build to shoot you with a ray spell or use a dagger, weapon finesse, is pretty high. So you've penalized their swing, and you can appreciate that. But go back to the minus to strength, and they're like, they don't care. That's not true. This game keeps track of loot and gear that they're wearing, for example. So if they're wearing stuff that's making them reasonably heavy, having a strength stat go down 2 points may make them slow and give them all kinds of other penalties that you're not seeing. Remember, if you are burdened, encumbered by having a low strength and, of course, carrying too much personal stuff on your character, not just the gear that the team shares, the stuff that's on you, like your armor, your weapon, etc. and so forth, you actually take a penalty to your dexterity. It can only go so high. So if these guys had a really nice dexterity, it's now really down low. Not just because of the -2, but because they're literally encumbered. And that could come in super handy. So again, I can see the appeal of this spell. Disrupt Undead. This is your last raise spell, infinite use cantrip. And it's good. Matter of fact, it's great because it's 1d6 of damage instead of the lame 1d3 that we've been seeing. However, it's positive energy and it only targets undead. That's positive energy is not a problem. It's the fact that it only works against undead that it makes it kind of suck. But it's the same general principle. It can miss, it can hit, it can crit, it can sneak attack if you're using the race spell. You can use that same Quicken Meta Magic Rod trick. And again, Eldritch Archers can shoot it through their weapon, which is pretty fucking baller to watch a bunch of archers line up, channel this, and take down the undead with like massive spikes to their face thanks to this 1d6 of positive energy added to their bow swing, or their arrow hit. Pretty cool. Flare. You may think that this one is as bad as Daze, and you'd be mistaken. A little sip of coffee. Flare is interesting in that It's auto hit, but so is daze. It lasts longer, so 1 minute effect is awesome. There is this save or suck component, so if they make their save, nothing happens. But the thing you like about this one is it's a very nice, no HD cap, so it will always be reasonably useful. Penalty to the target's attack bonus by 1 and their perception by 1. Now, is that amazing for the attack bonus? Yes. Especially early levels. You will really capitalize on the fact that you and your team have, technically speaking, a +1 to your armor because they have a -1 to their attack bonus for 1 minute. That's huge. Now that's against everybody that bastard's swinging against. So this is a decent spell. However, there is problems with it. For example, it's close range. Sightless creatures are straight up immune because you're basically overloading their optic nerve with this massive flare to the face. Doesn't do any damage. But I could see someone that's kind of weak, that's out of cantrips or spells, down to the cantrips, instead of using something like Ray of Frost doing like minimal damage that's not going to take the guy out, that they would use something like Flare to help them and the team out. The real caveat here, the problem I have with this spell would be one thing. The -1 to perception check is useful, I should point out, because again, you may have someone on the team stealthing or invisible. That's a perception check to see them. So again, they are at a penalty to spot that hidden target on your team. But it's only -1, and that's the really sucky part, because -1, that's bullshit. For attack bonus, that's huge. But for perception, I think they should have jumped it up to like -4, -5. Make it something feel important, you know what I mean? But whatever. I mean, I'm not going to quibble about a free penalty to the bad guy. It's just one of those where I feel that -1 really could have gotten a little bit of loving. But it's okay. Now we're up to level 1 spells. Here's where some fun is. Now, of course, I'm going to list these to you. We're not going to list all the different schools that they're associated with, but I will talk about the code and, of course, the stuff down bottom. And, of course, I will point out all the new spells to you guys because, again, if someone's watching this that's playing just on console, you probably want to know, why don't I have that spell? It's because of mods. So I'm going to walk you through that, too. The list is as follows for level 1. Blade Lash, Blade Tutor, Burning Hands, Chill Touch, Color Spray, Corrosive Touch, Enlarge Person, Expeditious Retreat, Flare Burst, Frostbite, Grease, Long Arm, Magic Missile, Magic Weapon, Obscuring Mist, Ray of Infieldment, Reduce Person, Shield, Shocking Grasp, Snowball, Stone Fist, True Strike, and Vanish. Now, on that list, the following are new spells: Blade Lash, Blade Tutor, Chill Touch, Frostbite, Long Arm, Magic Weapon, Obscuring Mist, and that's it. So everything else is the vanilla version of the game. Notice we have a variety of spells, from Abjuration, Conjuration, a couple even with saving throws. That's what the parentheses mean. This is how many spells are in the list. This is how many of those 5 have saves, or something similar. So again, nothing for saves for Abjuration or Divination. Hell, there's no enchantments ever. This is always going to be 0 for you. Notice that Transmutation, we have a lot of spells, nothing with the saving throw. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because remember, some will be attacks where there is no saving throw. So again, pretty damn cool. The reason I do this as a breakdown for per level is it helps draw my attention to say, oh, well, Conjuration has some decent saves. Same with Evocation and even Necromancy. Illusion, not so much. But again, those 3, Conjuration, Evocation, Necromancy, seem to be pretty powerful. Maybe I want to get spell focus in one or more of those schools. That's what draws my attention. Okay, and again, notice we have our typical asterisk. So no spell resistance, no spell resistance, no spell resistance, and Snowball, as you're going to see, is very cool. Pardon the pun. Let's talk about them individually, though, shall we? Blade Lash. This is a new one. Ranged trip spell with bonus to roll, but no damage. Doesn't do any damage. There's no spell resistance. Basically, your weapon just instantaneously turns into a whip. You don't see that, though. That's the downside of this. Because it's a mod, they couldn't add a whip animation. So what did they do? Well, they literally add it where you basically point at a target. The target gets the combat maneuver defense check against your combat maneuver check. Fortunately, you get a +10 to that check, so it's pretty likely to land. Now, it's entirely possible they could be immune to trip, and this spell would be useless. So I haven't tested that. But if they're not, and they fail, or don't defend, I should say it that way, against your combat maneuver appropriately, then they would basically, immediately after you point at them, they fall down. So basically is what it does. It trips them. It's a trip spell. But it's cool. And the bonus to +10 is kind of nice. It has a decent range. It's not amazing, but it's short range. And again, it could be used to great effect because, again, once they fall down, That's the equivalent of trip. They're prone. For those of you that don't know, when someone's prone, they have a penalty to their armor against melee attacks because it's hard for them to defend themselves. But they have a bonus to their armor against ranged attacks. So be aware of this. But not just that, they have to take an action to stand the fuck back up. Normally, if you're surrounded by bad guys, like your team, when this bad guy is standing back up, that's an attack of opportunity, baby. And everybody gets to wail on him, which is freaking sweet. So I can see the appeal for this spell. I'm sure it loses its favor over time. And again, immunity to trip could be a real problem. But when I talk about, do I like this spell, I should point out some other things. As a Magus have access to all these spells. An Eldritch Scion Magus, on the other hand, has a limited spell pick. So when I say it's good but not great, I mean for any other Magus I'd use it, but for an Eldritch Scion I probably wouldn't use it as a limited spell pick. Because their spell picks are so precious, this one's kind of like, nah, I just can't make myself take it. But for anyone else, hell yeah, you'll scribe it to your book. And yeah, you might even play around with it early levels, but eventually you'll probably be in favor of better buffs, better damaging spells. As we'll see, we have quite a few. Blade Tutor, now we're talking. This is an amazing buff. This one is only on you. It has a nice duration, but what does it do? Well, for all those feats and other effects that you have on you that lower your attack bonus, like Power Attack, Piranha Strike if you're a dex-based character, or if you're fighting defensively even, like you're trying to monk it up a little bit, that's a penalty to your swing. This spell gives you that penalty back, up to a maximum of +5. Now, having said that, for example, we will never get a power attack above -4 by the end of the build, not counting like one little trick. -4 is about where it's going to cap out for you. So you're not going to get +5, you'll get +4. Same with Piranha Strike. Fighting defensively never goes that high. Anyway, it's like -2, -3, something like that. So again, you're going to get a +2, +3, and that's best case scenario. Remember, it levels up. It starts off as a +1, then +2, all the way up to a +5 by the end of your build. But again, it will never go higher than. What I did not check is if Power Attack and Fighting Defensively combined get the bonus. I know it won't get you more than +5. What I'm saying is this is a -4, say this is a -3. So that's -8, or sorry, -7 total, right? I know that I can get a +5, but this is -4, so obviously I'm only getting +4. This is a -3. It's not giving me a +3 because I got both on. It will give me a total, I believe, of +5. So 4 and only 1 more for this guy. So what? Still a bonus. And again, you will appreciate it, especially for a build that centers on attacking. Downside on this one, only works on melee attacks, guys. So ranged archers, Eldritch Archer builds, sorry, no rapid shot, no deadly aim, penalty going away, bonus for you. And screw those guys, quite frankly. They get plenty of other cool shit. So this is still a very, very good spell for what you need it for. For almost every Magus, this is a staple, and I would take this on an Eldritch Scion every time. Burning Hands. Well, this one here is interesting. This one is your first AoE damaging spell. That is a lame cone. Let's just talk about that right off the bat. And it's not teammate friendly, and it's a save or half damage spell, reflex save. You know how those work. So, kind of a bummer spell. You can intensify it though, because it does 1d4 damage per caster levels. Caps out at level 5, maximum 5d4. Well, if you intensify, then you have to be caster level 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or higher. It equals your level up to 10. So 10d4 of damage could be put out for a level, at that point it'd be a level 2 spell. But still, that's pretty good for a level 2 spell. And again, you can line it up in a way to catch 2 or more dudes. It's easier to do if you're doing it in melee range, obviously, because it's such a narrow cone and doesn't go very far back. But again, you're a Magus. You have armor, you have spells, you're buffed up. Guys are going to rush you all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. You can take a little tiny 5-foot stutter step back, aim at the main group of the bad guys without lining it up to hit your team, of course, and you can probably get 3 dudes reasonably easy. So that's not bad. Chill Touch. This is a new spell. This is a new melee touch attack. So again, this is one that Magus can channel through their weapon. This one, again, I said that the Eldritch Archer can channel some melee touch attacks through their bow if they have a specific Magus Arcana. This is one that they cannot. I don't know why the modder forgot about it, but this spell will not do that. And that's fine. Again, they get plenty of other good stuff. But it can't work. But they do have a nice addition to the spell that I like. 2 things. One, when you cast it, you have to tell the game which way are you going to use it. Are you going to use it as a melee touch attack? Or are you going to use it as a weapon attack? And I believe if you the choices it gives you, it just says cast the spell or cast it as a weapon. If you cast it as a weapon, I believe that's the one that is a melee touch attack. Like you are treating it as if it is a weapon. But don't quote me on that. Test it yourself. Know that there's two different choices though. And one is literally to use it as a melee touch attack. The other choice is to use it through your weapon. Okay. Now, having said all that, another neat feature is they can cast it once, but they get multiple uses out of it. So they can get one touch attack per caster level. So up to 20 uses by just casting the spell one time. But what does it do? Not much. And that's why. It does 1d6 of negative energy damage. It does a penalty to their strength by 1. There is a saving throw, fortitude saving throw, to ignore that strength penalty. Notice something else though. There is a will save, but that's only if you're fighting against undead with this weapon, or this touch attack. Instead of damaging them, because again it's negative energy and again it's undead, it doesn't heal them either, thank God, but it does do a will saving throw, or the undead flee as if panicked for a specific amount of rounds. And that's not bad. For those of you that don't know, panicked is the highest level of fear in the game. So there's shaken, then there's frightened, and then there's panicked. And panicked, they're crazy. They fucking like power sprint. And if you trap them in a corner, they kind of like freak out, damn near piddle themselves, and just kind of stand there kind of. So it's awesome. And again, against undead, this could be extremely powerful. It doesn't do any damage, but it could really set up some nice fun stuff here. And again, the fact that you get multiple uses for one casting, that's pretty cool. Now on that, there is a problem with this. You have to know that it's there. It's in your ability tray. You have to reactivate it. So it's like a toggle. You right click it, the little icon in your ability tray, and it suddenly auto use at that point. So any chance you have to swing your weapon, you'll start using your chill touch again. But that's great, and you're definitely going to use that. Know that the moment you cast any other spell, chill touch then will go away. Doesn't matter if you have 19 charges left or 20 charges, 15 charges, 5 charges, 1 charge. You cast a spell, it goes away. So it only holds it in your memory, if you will, while you cast it once and haven't cast anything else. So this is one of those spells, and we have another one coming up that's just like it, where you will cast this, but only after you've pre-buffed up. You've done all the stuff you want to do, and it's time to chill touch some shit. Notice the fact that this takes a penalty to strength to the bad guy that you touch, assuming they fail their fortitude save. That could take them straight down to 0. If that's true, then that kills the guy. The reason I say that, it doesn't say anything about there's a limit on how low their strength can go. Just that it takes a point of strength away. Now, there's another spell coming up that it has a limit. It's called Ray of Infieldment, and it specifically says in its tooltip, will not take strength below 1. So you can't kill them with Ray of Infieldment. However, if you Ray of Infieldment takes them down to a strength of 1, and then you follow up with a chill touch, and they fail, now it goes down to 0, they could die. If that's true. Haven't tested it, but that would be very fun. And I could see the appeal of using chill touch for that reason. And I would assume something else that you would need to check out, that this penalty to strength stacks. And again, it's important to point that out because for Ray of Infieldment, it does not stack. So again, this -1 to strength, -1 to strength, and again, you can do that 20 goddamn times on a guy with one casting of the spell. So you're just smack, 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 just taking their strength away. Now, of course, by 20 hits, they're probably dead. But then, you know, there's no guarantee. So this could be cool. And again, I kind of dig the spell. I should point out that, of course, sneak attack and crits are appropriate when it's the melee touch attack. Crits through the weapon, of course, is appropriate if you're channeling it like a typical Magus, and of course you can miss. Color Spray. This is a vanilla version spell. Another AoE attack. It's got the same lame cone that we saw on Burning Hands, but this one, while it has all these different HD things associated with it, you're like, oh, another one of those HD cap spells. This one does not have a cap. This one has 5 or more HD. You will stun the target for 1 round. If they fail, of course, there will say. So it's a Saber Suck spell still. But they could have 5 HD, they could 500 HD by the end of the game, and they would still technically have the potential to stun somebody. That's cool. That's why this spell is worth having. I'm not saying I'd take it on an Eldritch Scion every time, but I can see the appeal. Again, sightless creatures are unaffected by it because, again, you're kind of overloading their optics with the massive color spray to their face. But the fact that at low levels it can blind, stun, knock prone, then blind, then stun for the low level dudes, or blind and stun for the middle level guys, and then at level 5 on up it just is a stun and that's it. That's still pretty good. That's a lot of shit that you can do with this, and the fact that you can line it up and hit like 2 or 3 dudes with it, and it's a will save, so if they're meleeing you, they're probably not really good at will saves. So again, pretty good chance that you're fucking up some fighter types pretty damn easy. And again, I like that there's no HD cap. It's not the best spell, but it's a solid choice. Corrosive Touch. This is one of your vanilla version melee touch attacks. This would be the one that you would take if you're an acid dragon type, for example. Or if you just really, really, really wanted to be a conjurer, I would probably dip into Corrosive Touch instead of Shocking Grasp. For thematic reasons, because it is a conjuration spell. It doesn't have a saving throw, so there's no real reason to pick it. I suppose you could do spell focus conjuration and then do spell specialization in Corrosive Touch, so you can get that 5th level earlier, so it does 5d4 of damage instead of, say, 3d4 of damage. That's kind of lame. But this can be intensified just like Shocking Grasp can, so again, you could get it to the point where it does 10d4 of damage. And if you're an Acid Dragon subtype, for Eldritch Scion Bloodline, then you do more damage based on acid spells. So instead of 5d4, it would be 5d4 plus 5. If it was 10d4, because you intensified it, it would be 10d4 plus 10. And that shit looks really fucking sexy when you're critting that through a weapon. Oh my god. So again, same general principle here. Sneak attack if it's the touch attack. Crits if it's a touch attack or channeled through the weapon. This is another one that an Eldritch Archer can use through the weapon if they have that specific Magus Arcana. So again, you got acid arrows now. You got shock arrows. You got touch of fatigue arrows. This is freaking cool for the Eldritch Archer, and I kind of dig that shit. Enlarged person, reduced person. Putting them together because it's basically mirror images of each other. Of these two, I usually find reduced person to be the better because it's giving you a lot of armor, a better swing, assuming you're a dex-based character, of course. Your weapon goes down in weapon size, so therefore it doesn't hit as for as much damage, but it's minor dip. It's like a -1 to your damage, probably. And that's not that big of a deal. And if you're already basing it off of dex and you have like not just weapon finesse, but you have like fencing grace or slashing grace, you get that penalty back because your dexterity went up. So, grand scheme of things, it's a really good spell. The other version, Enlarged Person, is kind of the weak one because despite being strong, and there's nothing wrong with that, you have a terrible dexterity. It's easier to hit you because of your dexterity. You're clumsy, so it's even easier to hit you. It's harder for you to hit the bad guys. Although that's not true because your strength went up as well. So that's kind of a wash. You don't get any real bonus. The real bonus you're getting from doing Enlarged Person is twofold. One, you do more damage. They're not taking that away from you. And two, you have a better reach. Well, I should say 3, because the third thing is your weapon category goes up as well. So again, you get a little more damage. So like a 1d4 weapon becomes a 1d6 weapon. Ooh, ring-a-ding-ding. But still, it's more. So if you're doing a build, like a strength-based Magus, Enlarged Person ain't bad. And I will say this, because of the extra reach, Enlarged Person is actually better than you think, because again, a normal ranged weapon is 5 feet. Now it's 10. And that 10 is a lot bigger. And again, it's the equivalent of you switching from a long sword to like a long spear. Long spears can reach 10 feet, or 8 feet, something like that. But basically, they have reach associated with them. Why is that important? If a bad guy has an aura on them, say like Vampiric Shadow Shield, you hit them with any melee weapon, normal reach melee weapon, or like one of your natural weapons, like you bite them, you claw them, you punch them. That's a natural weapon attack. You take damage. Fuck that. But if you have a reach weapon like a glaive, a long spear, or you have Enlarged Person on your character and you have reach now because you're so fucking big, you don't take damage from hitting those bastards because you're considered so far away from them, it doesn't work. Now, I imagine that the melee touch attacks or a unarmed strike or natural weapon attack might still discharge on you. But if you have a weapon, the weapon has reach now, and that's the key here. So again, there's some fun to be had there. And yes, the reach gets worse if you're a reduced person, so that sucks. But neither of these affect your speed, your ground speed, which is kind of funny to me. You would think that Enlarged Person would add like 5 feet or 10 feet movement or something like that. It does not. Same with Reduced Person. You think it would shorten it. I mean, hell, if you're a halfling, you'd lose 10 to your ground speed. You go from 30 to 20 just for being a halfling. That's what Reduced Person does. It takes a human-sized person and makes them a halfling-sized person. It takes a halfling and just makes them fucking adorable. And of course, if you do Enlarged Person on someone like Lindsay, she gets this massive friggin' head. It's just funny as hell. But these are 2 solid buff spells. And again, for those that ever watch me play the game, you'll know that while Evocation is the shit, I mean, let's just say it, it's an amazing spell school. I'm more of a Transmuter guy. I always love buffs, debuffs, spells that change you into shapes and shit like that. It's always been my thing. So I love Reduced Person and Enlarged Person for this reason. Expeditious Retreat, another transmutation spell. And again, you may say, this one's crap. And it is, and it isn't all at the same time. If for what it does it well, does it for a decent amount of time, it only works on you, but again, a plus 30 to your ground speed is fucking huge. We're talking at least a doubling. Why do I say at least? Again, if you're a halfling, you're moving at 20. You cast this on you, now you're moving at 50, so it's more than double. But if you're a typical human, for example, you're moving at 30, you cast this, now you're moving at 60. You doubled your movement. Now think about what I just said. If I'm in the corner, and there's a bad guy, let's say this big fucking triangle. I've been to school, I swear I have. This rectangle up here is the bad guy, and I'm trying to get from point A to point B. Now, yeah, I could probably either A, charge him and swing only once, or maybe I want to get over there and guarantee that I can swing, right? Without charging, maybe I have fatigue and therefore I can't charge. Well, if I'm moving at 60, in one turn, one movement of a turn, I should say, I can get from here to here pretty easily. And then for my standard action, I swing my weapon once or cast a spell or whatever. Boom, done. If I don't have the spell on me, I move 30. And while, yeah, you could say, well, you can move another 30. Yeah, but you can't attack after that. So that's a bummer. I use this not only for that, but I also use it for positioning and for what I call kiting. I'm sure other people use this term as well. But kiting, for those of you that don't know, this is the one where I would do it without turn-based combat because it fucks it all up. You get yourself a solid crossbow. You go solo without the team. You buff up with this spell and maybe like shield, maybe a reduced person for some extra armor and some better dexterity, because again, crossbows don't give no fucks about how strong you are. Yes, the crossbow strength will go down because you're a smaller size category, but still it's going to hit for a decent amount of damage. You get some melee bad guys, like a group of spiders, for example, and you have a nice long hallway. You shoot them, you turn tail and run away from them. The AI says they have no choice but to follow you. They will chase you down and try to bite your ankles. Well, you run down that hallway, you stop, turn, shoot again. Turn away and run some more. Stop, turn, shoot again, and then keep repeating the process. The trick is getting the pattern down, because the timing is important. Why do I say that? Because every round is 6 seconds, and you are in combat now, whether you have turn-based combat on or not. Doesn't matter. They're actively fucking trying to eat your face. So, every 6 seconds, it's your turn to shoot. So if you shoot and run away, and if you stop and turn and you're standing there, but not shooting, and your character should be shooting because they're within range, why aren't you shooting? Well, one of two things have happened. Either A, you stopped too soon, and it's not your turn yet, or B, you stopped after your turn, so you didn't get your second turn, you didn't get your chance to shoot, you just moved and stopped, and now you have to wait for your third turn. You see that? So like I said, you get the pattern down pretty good. And you say, well, why buff yourself with shield spell? Because these guys aren't going to hit you if they're meleeing. Well, yes, but the quarter ends. When the quarter ends, you got to fucking run right past them, or circumvent them some other way. But by and large, you're usually running right past the little fuckers and kiting some more, running in the opposite direction. And if you get good at it, you can go from, I wouldn't do it at level 2. I'd probably start at level 3 doing this shit. You can go from level 3 to 5, maybe even 3 to 6 solo. Pretty fucking easy in a certain couple areas in this game. And you can use this trick, again, with turn-based combat off for most of the goddamn game. It's just narrow corridors and rooms and maps. It's not viable. It just really isn't. Unless you do something else, like maybe like throw a grease spell down or a web spell down and dance around it, where they're slippy sliding or getting caught up in the web, or, you know, slowed and impeded in some other way where you can still run them around in a fucking circle and shoot them, run around in a circle and shoot them, run around in a circle and shoot them, because the AI is an idiot in this game. So again, this is actually kind of cool, and I like it for that reason. It may not make every Eldritch Scion build of mine, but every Magus would appreciate at least using this sometimes. And again, usually I'll just get like a meta magic, or a wand, cast it for 1 minute and run super fast, because that's usually good enough for me to kill most things. Flare Burst. This is Flare's big brother. AoE version, not teammate friendly, so there is that. That's the same principles apply here, though. So it's sightless creatures are immune, it's a save or suck spell, auto hit, it's AoE, and it is a decent size AoE. I'll give them credit for that at least. And again, not teammate friendly, not you friendly, so just be careful with it. Frostbite. This is the other new melee touch attack for this level. Again, the same principles that we saw with all melee touch attacks. It crits, whether it's through the weapon or as a melee touch attack. It can sneak attack if it's used as the melee touch attack only. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's better than the other guy at least. Can use for all the Magi except for the Eldritch Archers. And again, even with that Magus Arcana, they can't use this one. So again, this is another one of those, what the hell. But no saving throw, and there's an effect we'll talk about here in a second, and no spell resistance. So you will actually enjoy this spell. And it has that same principle where you can cast it once and you have multiple uses up to your caster level up to 20. So again, cast it, melee touch attack, or channel it through your weapon multiple times and smack, 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 smack. But don't cast another spell until you're convinced yourself you've done enough damage with it, or you're just like, fuck it, I need the other spell. But this one does 1d6 of cold damage, +1 per level, max +10. I would assume that means you could probably intensify this spell, but you wouldn't intensify the 1d6. The cap is level cap 10. So if you're level 15 now and you intensify this, you get a +15 would be what that would do. And that's not amazing, so I probably wouldn't do it. But fuck it, 20 uses of a 1d6 +15 damage is still not that bad for a level 2 spell. It also makes the target fatigued, and notice there is no save for that. That does not mean they can't be immune to fatigue or exhaustion effects. This does not make them exhausted if you reapply it. But it sets up fatigue, much like our touch of fatigue. And I like this one because, again, no save, no spell resistance. That's 2 big penalties for you fatiguing a target. This is almost a guaranteed fatigue. Almost in that you can miss, and the other is that it can be immune. But that's about it. It's a really good chance that that's going to land. And again, it doesn't stack on itself with the fatigue part, but it will set up fatigue so that something else can do the exhaustion, which again makes it fucking cool. Grease spell. This one is a vanilla version spell. So it's in the vanilla version of the game. But this is one of my 3 big crowd control spells, early levels. So my 3, we're going to hit all 3 today, but just to list them for you. Grease at level 1 is one of the best spells in the game. It sounds silly, but it really is. It never gets old, and it's always fun. And this mod actually makes it even better, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The other 2 spells that are at level 2 are Glitter Dust and Web. If I'm not grabbing at least one of those 3, at least one, something's wrong with me. If I can fit at least 2 of those, I can grab Grease and something else. If I can get all 3, because I just said, fuck it, I really like all 3, and I do like all 3. Fuck yeah, I'll take all 3. So again, on an Eldritch Scion build where spell picks are precious, those 3 spells are still really freaking good, and I'll walk through you on all 3 of them. But this one here is great for a couple of reasons. One, it lasts for a long time, and you may think, well, who gives a shit about that? Well, you do, because on some of those later fights, a couple minutes of fighting is not unrealistic. But it works from start to finish. There's no spell resistance, and this is going to be a staple for all 3 of these crowd control spells, which is why you're going to see that I love them. But also, this really screws over the bad guys when they slippy slide and fall down and get the fuck back up. No, this is not teammate friendly or you friendly, so you have to be careful with it. However, if you're immune, or the bad guys for that matter, are immune to ground-based effects / difficult terrain, I don't know which it is. I would assume ground-based effects. But if you're immune to one, you're usually immune to both. This spell will not work on you. That's good news for you, because if you're, say, an Eldritch Scion, like my favorite, my Dragon Eldritch Scion build, they have wings at some point. Not just a spell like Fly, which also makes you immune to ground-based effects, but they actually have wings that can always be on. Asomers can always have wings at level 10 on up. They just have to burn a feat to buy it. They leave those wings always on. They're immune to ground-based effects, which means you can cast a spell under their feet or your feet, and it will not affect you one whit. Which is fucking awesome. It's kind of like the, come at me, bro, and they're shitting down a big grease pile on the ground. And their stupid AI is going to run right through that grease and, in some cases, fall on their ass, giving you attacks of opportunity as well as your team, and just fucking up their shit. And because it lasts, because it persists, they'll get back up, because they'll make their check eventually, and then they'll fail it again and fall right the fuck back down. It's an amazing spell because of shit like this. Again, no spell resistance. Yes, it's a save or suck spell, but again, it checks multiple times. Every round it's going to check for them if they're still in it, which is freaking cool. And of course, they move at half speed, etc. so forth. There's all kinds of other cool shit associated with this, but this, for what it does, it's awesome. It can't be set on fire, which I think is a pen and paper thing. Same with like Web. You can't set it on fire like you can in pen and paper, which is kind of a bummer, but I'm okay with that. This never gets old. It always has the potential to work. Doesn't mean it will work. Has the potential to work like on every bad guy. There's very few things in this game that straight up fly or that are immune to its effects. And the fact that there's no spell resistance, fucking money. So it's a great spell. Oh, and I should point out the one other reason that this mod makes it even better. This spell can be dispelled for free now. Call of the Wild has added its own dispel effect to every character. So if you cast any spells like Grease, Web, anything that persists after the fight's over, you can point and click at it and say, I don't need that anymore, and it goes away. That's fucking awesome. This was something that we've always ruled as house rules, where you summon the grease spell, you can make the grease go away just by thinking about it. Because why not? You shouldn't have to cast a spell magic on your own magic, was our logic. So I know it's not pen and paper worthy. Fuck it, I don't care. And apparently neither did this modder, because they're like, hey, I hate that shit. So I agree. That's why grease is so nice, because while that 10-foot burst is decent size, it's not huge, but it's perfect size for like a doorway. Slap that shit down in the door jamb, just boom, right on the ground. Come at me, bro. Run down the fucking hallway. The AI will fucking get caught up on that goddamn grease pile. You turn around and shoot like lightning bolt. Big ass, not a ray spell, I call them beam spells, because they're AoE, but straight line spells. Like lightning bolt, right down that corridor, just fry their little asses. It's an amazing spell. From here, long arm, new spell. This one, all it does, it's a self buff. That's decent duration. All it does is increase the reach of your weapon by making your limbs longer. Now you don't actually see your limbs get longer. It would have been fucking baller if it did. But you don't. It just increases the radius. And what that looks like, if this was your character, this dot, you'd have like a natural radius with your weapon that you could highlight. You'd see a red circle around your character for when you're meleeing. If you have this on you, that circle gets much bigger. So again, it gives you basically the equivalent of a reach weapon. And I should have pointed this out for a large person. It does the same thing. And I believe they stack. So you can have a fucking ridiculous reach with a weapon because you're big and you have long arm on your character. But those are really useful for specific types of build that use things like cleaving finish or improved cleaving finish. The way those work is if I hit a bad guy and he dies, I target the next guy within range. Well, if your range is only 5 foot, you're probably only getting like 2, maybe 3 or 4 guys in that circle. But if you have like a 10 foot, 15 foot fucking range, you can hit like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys if they're all clumped up on you. Like you're trapped in a corner. You're not trapped in the corner by them. You're trapping them in the corner with you and your big ass fucking arms and your enlarged person build and that glaive that you have that already had reach to begin with, and you're fucking lopping heads off in a freaking circle. It's an amazing spell for that reason. It's weird because it doesn't do anything besides that. But so what? That's what you needed it for, right? So again, on a cleaving finish build, this will definitely make the cut. Magic Missile. Now this is a spell that I just have to pick. This one is the iconic low-level spell for like a wizard. I know we're not a wizard, it's not the point. For an arcane caster, if you don't cast things like Fireball or, I suppose, Lightning Bolt or Magic Missile, I have to wonder what the fuck's wrong with you. Because those are 3 really iconic spells. And there's reason that people love making a wizard and getting to that level 5 level so they can finally have Fireball. It's the same with Magic Missile, though. It's an auto hit. It scales with level, so you get 1 and more missiles. Sadly, in this game, you can't pick different targets. You can only pick one guy and hit him with all the missiles at once, but so what? I was probably going to do that anyway. Scales with damage, then that way, or with your caster level that way for damage. And some targets in this game are actually immune to magic, except this spell. How weird is that? And it doesn't mean that's the only way to kill them. You can hit them with a weapon and they'll die, but it's not the point. When you need it, it's there, and it's an amazing spell. Now, yes, shield spell makes you immune to it, and there's bad guys in the game that cast shield spell like at the very start of a fucking combat round. You'll see it in the tunnels a lot. Until that time, or if your initiative happens to be better than theirs, find that motherfucker, target that motherfucker, drop that motherfucker, is my advice to you, because Magic Missile is an amazing spell. And I should point out there is because of these mods, they've added a meta magic feat, which actually capitalizes on the fact that it does force damage. There's a meta magic feat called, I want to say, Toppling, where it only works on spells that do force damage, like this one. If they hit, and you've meta magicked it up with Toppling, they fall prone. So it's like a knockdown spell. Fucking sweet. And again, it's not that expensive. I think it only increases to caster level 1. So it'd be a level 1 spell, now becomes level 2 to do Toppling, I think. And if that's the case, that's not bad. That's actually a really good use for Magic Missile. Magic Weapon, I think this one's new. I can't remember. There's been too many times I've used this, but I think Eldritch Arcana has this, but I know Call of the Wild has it too. So Magic Weapon is good, it's just not great. But early on, it's a cheap buff for you or a teammate to get a +1 better attack and damage. Notice something. It will stack with the enhancement of the weapon, but only up to +5 total. So if the weapon was already +5, this does nothing. If it's +4, you cast a spell on that person that has this weapon, and now it's +5. For the duration anyway. That's not bad. It does not work, however, on natural weapons. That includes your unarmed strikes, your bites, your claws, things of this nature. Magic Fang does that. We don't actually have access to that. Or do we? Actually, we don't. But a specific subclass of Magus does. Anyway, point is, this is decent, but keep reading. This part here is where people get tripped up. If it's a masterwork weapon, remember masterwork weapons have a +1 to their swing only. Not damage, just the attack bonus. It won't stack with that. It will get rid of it, technically speaking, and replace it with a +1 to attack and +1 to damage. So all this will do is increase your damage a point. So what? You still want it, right? So it's not the worst thing ever. Just know that it doesn't stack with that, but it will stack with the magic enchantment of the weapon. Now, this is less important to me because as a Magus, we can buff our weapon, as you probably already know. We can make it +1. We can turn it on fire. We can make it a Bane weapon eventually. Again, so this is not that cool. But again, they stack, and that's the point. So I'd happily cast this and then instead of turning it into another +1 weapon or whatever extra, I would turn it into a fire weapon with my Magus ability. So that's cool, I suppose. But I probably would pass on this spell, or if I grabbed it, I would spec out of it, which is a beautiful thing that these mods will let you do. As you level up, you can pick one spell at every so many levels and spec out of it. Scary Mist. This one's a new one. This one's actually pretty baller. It's actually good and bad all at the same time. I know it sounds weird. Let me explain. It's a nice duration, good range, a solid burst area effect. But anyone in it, for melee purposes, have a 20% concealment. So basically this is like AoE blur for a level 1 spell. But sadly it's AoE blur for you and the bad guys if they're in the cloud. Well, there's ways around that though. Like Blind Fight gives you another chance to re-roll. And if you get improved Blind Fight or greater Blind Fight or whatever the hell it is, eventually it ignores the 20% miss chance. That's why this is awesome. This is the spell that I've been saying for a long time. It's straight up been missing from my game because this is fucking powerful. And it says, but incorrectly, that if someone's trying to shoot you in the cloud, from outside of the cloud, you have 50% concealment. Yes, you do. What it doesn't tell you is that if I'm in the cloud and trying to shoot someone outside of the cloud, with say like a bow or a ray spell, for example, they also have 50% concealment. So it works both ways. But again, those penalties can be overcome with things like Blind Fight, improved precise shot, etc. and so forth. So there's ways around it. And the chances that the bad guys have a way around it is slim to none. So this is really good early levels, and it's probably decent even at the end of the game. So this is a solid spell, in my opinion. Ray of Infieldment, we talked about it in passing, but notice that this is a ray spell, so it can crit. And I believe the crit actually does work for the minus to strength, but I don't know that. I can't test that. So that's a possibility, though. The way that you'd probably test that, if for those of you that are more patient than me, I would use Metamagic Rods maximize this spell, so you're guaranteed to get the 6 and the 5, so it'd be 11 guaranteed. If they make their save, then you know that's cut in half, it's 5, because it's 5.5, it round down. But if you keep doing that with the maximized Metamagic Rod and you finally crit, you can kind of keep an eye on the target strength and say, oh, did it crit? Did it actually lower it more than the 11? Yes, well then the crit does work. That's how you would actually test that. I'm just too lazy to do it. Sorry, it's the holidays. I'm a bum today. It doesn't have a very good duration. That sucks. It gets better over time, and the range straight up sucks. And the fortitude save is really garbage, since the guys you're probably going to use it on are going to be the meleeers, and they're fighter types or barbarian types. They're going to have a high fortitude check. However, at least it's fortitude for half penalty. So it still has an effect, which is my saving grace on this. Can be used by Eldritch Archers, channeling it through their bow, and that's pretty fucking funny. Little muscle paralysis arrow, if you will, making them weaker. That's kind of cool. It's a single target debuff, but for a level 1 spell. I mean, honestly, what did you expect? Notice this spell doesn't stack with itself, and it can't take the strength score below 1. What does it mean by not stacking with itself? You can't zap them and zap them and zap them until you get them down to a 1. And the way this works is this. Let's say you're using Maximize, so that we can guarantee it's 11 every time, and they always fail their fortitude save. Let's just say I hit you once, you're down 11 strength points. Zap. Now let's say I'm stupid and I clicked you again by mistake, and I hit you for another 11 strength penalty because you failed your check. It hits you, and it's guaranteed to be 11. It will not be 11 plus 11. Wait, it gets worse. If I'm not maximizing it, let's say on the first roll you roll a 6 and then you have the 5, so it is an 11. You don't maximize it, they just a penalty minus 11 to their strength. Bam, fuck you. And then I hit you again by mistake. And then this time, instead of it being a 6 plus 5, it's a 1 plus 5 because I rolled poorly. so it's technically a total of 6. It replaces the minus 11. So it replaces itself. It uses the most current zap. You understand? So that's a problem. So hit him once, fucking forget about that prick at that point. You can hit him with that other spell. Remember the one we talked about that lowers their strength by 1 for every hit, assuming they fail their save. That's not bad. And again, it could be really used to cripple a target at that point. This would be a good way to get them down low, and then the other one to finish them off is the idea. And that's how I'd probably use this spell. But I still use this even on a melee build, on one that's not an Eldritch Archer. I will still take this spell. It's actually that useful. It's just at this point I'm getting real picky because I'm as an Eldritch Scion, which is the type of builds that I'm more likely to play. I have limited amount of spells. So again, that sucks. Shield spell. Amazing spell. And while you may say, oh, this is awesome because, again, you can't wear a shield. Well, that's not true anymore. With this mod, they've added the ability for you to have shields for a Magus, a Wizard, a Sorcerer, and not to impact your arcane spell failure. And, again, you can still use, I think, like a Buckler or a Light Shield. And that's kind of cool. Those are feats that are out there now. That's kind of nice. But, again, for what it does, this is still awesome. And the immunity to Magic Missile is awesome. And, again, there's nothing wrong with this spell. I happily take this. Matter of fact, the 2 spells I take as a level 1 Magus every time are either Shield and Shocking Grasp, or if I'm playing like an Acid Dragon type, I'll play Shield and Corrosive Touch. But I basically get my melee touch attack in, and I get me a nice solid armor buff with Shield. That's at level 1. That's like, unless of course one of those spells are free, that's a different story. But by and large, if I'm not getting it for free in my build, I'm definitely taking it at level 1. That's how good this spell is. Shocking Grasp. Again, the other one that I usually take. Again, it's melee touch attack. It can crit. It can sneak attack. If it's just the melee touch attack, you can channel it through your weapon. Even if you're an Eldritch Archer and you have that Magus Arcana, so you have shock arrows now. It can be intensified, like we said, so up to 10d6 of damage, 20d6 if it fucking crits. For a level 2 casting of a spell, or level 1 if you're using a Meta Magic Rod, this is fucking amazing. This is an awesome spell. This is one that literally finishes guys off very quickly once you start getting to those level 5, level 6, level 10 casters builds. Suddenly guys are just dropping like flies because they're just taking a shit ton of damage out of nowhere. And you have multiple castings because it's a low level spell. It's a staple. Snowball. This is another one that's a staple. And you may not think so because, again, Eldritch Archer, sure, it's a nice race spell that does damage. This would be the one that they would probably pick. Makes sense, right? Yes, it does make sense. However, you still want it on a melee build, and here's why. No spell resistance, solid damage that can be intensified. Even if they make the saving throw, it has nothing to do with the damage. It can crit, it can sneak attack, and again, because you are using it as a race spell, unlike an Eldritch Archer who could use it as either, it's going to get that sneak attack if you have the potential to do so. So that's nice. You can really hit, like I've used this, just to put this in the context. At the end of the game, where I'm fighting bad guys that I cannot hit them because their spell resistance is so fucking high that I'm like, fucking really? And I'm not even a subcaster. I'm not like somebody that's like double dipping and like I'm a monk this and a priest that or a paladin this. No, I'm a straight up fucking Magus. I have no penalties to my spellcasting ability. And I still can't land my fucking attacks. That's when this shit gets pulled out. I remember, oh fuck, I have snowball spells. Fuck yeah. Make sure that you have sneak attack spell on, which is called Sense Vitals. I'll talk about that in the wizard spells. But this is an amazing way for you to suddenly have sneak attack damage, so 5d6 can be turned into 10d6 with intensified. Add another 6d6 or so of sneak attack potential on top of that. You can hit a motherfucker for some serious damage back to back to back to back with you, Octavia, and maybe like Ragangar. Just say, fuck you, Snowball, and just take their ass out. And it's fucking so satisfying. And of course it adds that staggered condition. This is what this is, by the way. They can't move and attack in the same round. They can do one or the other, and that's it. But it doesn't do, that's not true. Oh yeah, no, save prevents staggered effect, but not damage. Yes, sorry. I was thinking that stagger doesn't do damage. I'm like, of course it doesn't do damage. Why would I put that there? I have to read the whole damn tooltip. But the one round of being staggered, again, what do they mean? And you're like, well, so what? If you're probably up and in their face anyway, because you probably would be as a melee attacker. The fact that they can't move, so what? They're going to be there anyway. They're going to swing at you. No, they're not. Because what this is saying is you're taking away their full action. Only if you have a full action can you swing with your weapon, remember? I keep forgetting this part. So if I take away their move, and now they can only attack, they're going to swing at me once and they're fucking done. That's fucking awesome. That's really powerful. And again, yeah, they may make that check. They may not. So again, pretty appealing. And again, a conjuration spell. So if conjuration is your thing, or even cold dragon is your thing, you're doing really good for yourself by taking Snowball spell. Stone Fist. This one's nice. This one's weird though. This one I always want to make on like a Sword Saint build where I'm using my unarmed strikes to attack. That's my weapon of choice, is my fist. But it actually doesn't work that way because this is not your fist. It says your unarmed strikes do blah blah blah. They are not considered unarmed strikes. These are considered actual weapons. So you get whatever weapon you did have in your hand, like say you had a longsword, you cast this spell, the longsword disappears, and you have in your right hand a stone fist, and in your left hand a stone fist. And that's your two new weapons. You only get 2 attacks a round. 3 if you cast haste on yourself or something similar. But by and large, you're getting 2, maybe 3 attacks. But the good news is, all of those attacks, whichever ones we're talking about, are melee touch attacks now. That's fucking cool. And what's better is because you have 2 of them, the game glitches when you try to do things like cast melee touch attacks through your weapon. It'll do it, but it'll do it for both fists. So you'll punch with one and deliver a shocking grasp, and you'll punch with the other and deliver another equal shocking grasp from one casting of shocking grasp, or frigid touch, or vampire touch, or whatever melee touch attack we're talking about. But that's fucking cool, and that's clearly a glitch, and I do not care because there's so many penalties associated with this spell. It only affects you. It's got a nice duration. The real trick on this one that bugs me is, like I said, it's not true unarmed strikes. So again, if a Sword Saint is specialized in unarmed strikes, remember you only get your extra armor and all those other cool buffs for being a Sword Saint if you're wielding your weapon of choice. This is not your weapon of choice. So it takes that away. So you lose armor, you lose your weapon focus bonus, and any other bonuses you have for unarmed strikes is suddenly out the window because you're punching with your stone fist, which is the quote-unquote weapon. And that's where it gets fiddly and weird. But again, and you may say, well, I'm limiting to 2 attacks a round. Normally I have 3. Yes, but your 3 attacks are at full strength and a -5 to your BAB and a -10 to your BAB. This is 2 full attacks at your full BAB, and they're both touch attacks, guaranteed. So while that sounds bad, this is not as bad as you think. And the fact that you can get 3 with like haste on you is still fucking cool. So it's really, really good. It's very, very weird, is my point though. True Strike. Depends on who you are. I actually like this spell, and I like this spell for a couple of reasons. One, because I will use like meta magic rods to quicken it. So it's a swift action, so it's like poof. The next attack in that same combat round is probably going to fucking hit. I'm at a +20 with just this spell for the very next hit and this hit only. And the other reason I like it is because of this. If there's a concealed target, like they're displaced or they're blurred for some reason, this ignores the mischance. It just cuts right through it. And that's nice. This is useful for me from like when I have a bad guy, especially end game, where they're like, I can't hit this motherfucker. His armor's just too fucking high. What the hell? True Strike. And fucking hit him with something hard. And another example would be is if you have, I routinely do build, since it's Eldritch Scions, they have a high charisma. And I usually do a strength-based build. I'll do things like Corrigan Smash, Shatter Defenses, maybe even Dreadful Carnage. For those of you that don't know what that means, if I hit you with my weapon with power attack on, just hit you, doesn't matter if it does a shit ton of damage or like a point. I hit you, it does an intimidation check. That might scare you, shaken your character. Then every subsequent attack while you're scared, because of Shatter Defenses, you have are considered flat-footed to me, which means you have no dexterity modifier, no dodge modifier. You're fucked. And I just beat the shit out of you. So if I need to set up that very first, very precious hit to intimidate you, True Strike. That's what I use it for. There's other reasons to use it too, and again, like I said, it's some people swear by it, some people are like, this is garbage. And the reason people think it's garbage is because for like a wizard or even a sorcerer, you cast this spell. You just wasted your turn because you don't get to cast this spell and do anything else. Unless, again, you quicken it with like a meta magic rod or meta magic feats. So people would not do that more likely than not. They'd be like, fuck it, I'll just cast Fireball. And I understand that, or Magic Missile, or something else. So I understand that for them, but you're not them. You're a Magus, and you also have this cool ability that allows you to cast a spell and attack in the same fucking round. It's called Spell Combat, and all Magus have it. So again, for you, this is awesome. For everyone else, fuck those guys. Vanish, the last level 1 spell. Vanish is nothing more than invisibility. So Vanish, invisibility, and greater invisibility are all the same in that they give you a +20 to your stealth for various durations. That's the real selling point here. And for Vanish and invisibility, as we'll see, The moment you attack, the spell wears off. Doesn't matter if you have a round left, a minute left, 5 minutes left. It's gone. Greater Invis is the only one where you can attack with it still up, and it stays up. And that's why Greater Invisibility is, quite frankly, greater. But this is still an okay spell. It's not something that I'd pick on an Elder Scion, but for any other build, I might slot it once or twice just to fucking dink around with it, especially if I'm going to do like some sneak attack love, because it does set up sneak attack, but only for the very first hit, because you are technically invisible until they spot you. That's what this basically is doing, and it only goes to a maximum of 5 rounds, and that shit straight up sucks, yo. That's why invisibility is better, but even it has that same caveat. While it may last 20 minutes, the moment you attack, it's now gone. So 20 minutes drop down to like 10 seconds, probably. But you can have some fun with both of those, I think. Level 2 spells now. Acid Arrow, Aggressive Thundercloud. The 3 single buff spells that you have access to as all Magus include the Strength, the Dexterity, and the Con one. You don't get the 3 mental ones unless you purchase them, so to speak. Bladed Dash, Blur, Effortless Armor, Fiery Runes, Flurry of Snowballs, Force Sword, Frigid Touch, Glitter Dust, Ice Slick, Visibility, Mirror Image, Molten Orb, Savage Maw, Scorching Ray, Stone Call, Summon 6 Goblins, Telekinetic Strikes, and Web. It's a lot of new spells. Let's go over the new ones first. Aggressive Thundercloud, Bladed Dash, Fiery Runes, Flurry of Snowballs, Force Sword, Ice Slick, Savage Maw, Summon 6 Goblins, Telekinetic Strikes. That's a lot of new spells, man. And I like a lot of them. And again, we break them down by category. Notice the only ones we're getting here are Conjuration, Evocation, a few illusion spells, and those are all buffs, you know, like your Invisibility, your Blur, your Mirror Image, and some Transmutation spells, and only one of them has a save, or something similar to a save. That's Savage Maw. And again, 1, 2, 3 of the typical schools that I would focus on as a Magus, it would be one of these 4. Conjuration, Evocation, Necromancy, which didn't even show up here, and Transmutation. Those would be the 4 that, to me, make the most sense for a spell-focused build. Let's talk about each spell, though, shall we? Acid Arrow is just like a big brother version of Acid Splash. No spell resistance, you gotta love that. The best range in the game, we really love that. And again, sneak attack and crit are applicable because it is a ray spell. Yes, for Eldritch Archers, it'll only crit if you're channeling it through the weapon. But they can also shut that little toggle off and cast it as a ray spell still, and then shoot with their bow, or whatever ranged weapon they're using. This one's nicer than I give it credit for, because I keep forgetting that it does damage and then does damage per round after that. So it ticks for damage. I'm like, who cares? You care, because you hit it with a caster. Every time they take damage, like at the start of their fucking turn, they literally have to do a concentration check to cast a spell because they've been damaged. So you, at the longest possible range, you hit that motherfucker in the face, and he's acid, and he can't cast his fucking spells anymore, or has at least a problem casting his spells. That's why this one's cool. It's not the best damage, but again, I love it for the range, and I love it for the no spell resistance. Aggressive Thundercloud. This is a new spell. This one's great, quite frankly, for a level 2 spell. It has a lot of weird features. One, when you cast it, whoever's in the area effect, which is not very big, 2-foot burst is kind of fucking tiny, takes 3d6 of electric damage. That includes you or your team, so be careful with this, so it's not teammate friendly. However, it does more than just that. Not only does it do that damage to the initial guy unless they make a reflex save to negate all the damage, so it's a save or suck spell. If they're in the cloud, and because the cloud persists, they get 20% concealment, like Blur. That means you could do this to yourself. I would make myself immune or highly resistant to electricity first, but stand in that shit. That's Blur for free, and it does damage to anybody that comes into your zone of the cloud. That could be a nice way for you to damage the bad guys and protect you at the same time. And yes, before you ask, it protects them too. It gives them concealment because they're in the fucking cloud. But again, there's ways around that, as we saw before with the Obscuring Mist. So this is a good spell. It gets even better though. As a move action, you can sacrifice your move action to mentally, if you will, move the cloud anywhere within range. So now you hit it with some bad guy over here, and you say, well, this guy's not anywhere near the cloud. Fuck it, my turn. I can still hit him where I'm standing, but I want to move my cloud. I'll move the cloud to there, damage that motherfucker, and then I'll just swing with my weapon still. Or swing once, whatever, with my weapon. That's kind of cool, and I kind of dig it. That's why the duration is actually more important than you think. It's cheap damage, and 3d6 of damage for a level 2 spell is not that bad, especially if it's ticking for multiple rounds. You're having some fun, is my point. Of course, your 3 buff spells, your Bear's Endurance, Bull Strength, Cat's Grace, easily replaced with gear, but could be useful early levels. And I'd only get one, and I'd probably spec out of that fucker. Because once you get up, like I say, bull strength, once you get a belt of strength +2, that's almost as good, and it's always on, and I don't have to waste a spell slot on it. So I'll take bull strength and recycle it back out and grab a better level 2 spell. Bladed Dash, this is a new one. This one's actually very good. It's short range, and I did not bother to check for reach to see if reach would work on it, and if it does, that's awesome. You should definitely do that. But basically, this is a teleport and stab someone in the face spell. You literally teleport to your target. You basically cast the spell by clicking a target, and if he's within range, you teleport to that target and you stab him or punch him or hit him with your whatever weapons in your hand. Obviously, only for melee. But again, really nice. And better than that, as you teleport, not only do you not provoke attacks of opportunity by doing this, you also get a bonus to your swing based on your intelligence or your charisma modifier, your casting stat. Whichever is the best, but that's chances are the one that's your casting stat. And again, a high intelligence or high charisma, that can add upwards of +10 or more to your swing. Now, yeah, you only get to swing once, and it does not work with spell combat / spell strike, so be aware of this. So you're not going to teleport to that guy, smack him on the snoot, and then swing. It doesn't work that way. But you can fuck his shit up, and that can be some serious fun. You could possibly, and I hadn't tested this out, I just thought of this now, you could technically use like a quicken metamagic rod, cast this, teleport over the motherfucker, and now it's quickened, so you're there and you hit him in the face. Then you shut off the rod, and then you might be able to still attack. I hadn't thought of that. That'd be a good thing to test. You guys should do that. Let me know down below. But this is a fun one. And there's, of course, if there's Bladed Dash, you better believe that later in the build you get greater Bladed Dash, and that's even better. Blur, a normal vanilla version spell that came with the game. It's a solid spell. It's a staple. 20% chance to miss you or your team or your teammates' pets or your pets is a solid fuck you to the bad guy. And yes, there's ways around it. But until they get those ways around it, this is always something that you'll cast on your character. Effortless Armor. Most people would say this is stupid. I disagree. I wouldn't take it on every build, but if it's a build where I can like swap out my spells every day like a true Magus can, I'd slot it every now and again. You are wearing, after all, medium or heavy armor, probably, at some point, maybe not with the Eldritch Archers, because you're definitely a dex-based build for those guys. But if you're like wielding a scimitar and you're like going a strength-based build, you're probably wearing like plate mail. And having reduced speed sucks. And yes, I know I can get 30 back by casting Expeditious Retreat, but wouldn't you rather have your speed back to the full 60? I know I would. So that's why this is kind of useful. And again, the penalty to your armor check is helpful. It's not amazing. But that basically works on your athletics, your mobility, and your stealth. So stealthing in full armor is fucking hilarious to me. And if you're out in the wild and you're not fighting, and you're like, oh, I have to do an athletics check to climb this rock. I've mentioned this in another video before, but it's worth mentioning again. People would say, well, just take the armor off, use your athletics check, and your whole team teleports to the top of the rock. And that's true. However, what if there's bad guys at the top of the rock, and the fight immediately starts? I'm naked now. I ain't got no fucking armor on. Whoopsie doodles. That's why I don't mind this spell. It's not the best spell ever, but I could see if I have room for it in the build, I'll make a concerted effort to pick it up. Fiery Runes. On paper, it looks good. In practice, it's shit. Let me explain what it does. You buff your weapon. The weapon does nothing special. However, at any time during this duration, you can discharge the weapon, the runes on the weapon, doing fire damage, up to 5d4 plus 5. And again, you could intensify this probably. It will not go up to 10d4 plus 10, because it's every 2 caster levels. So it stops at level, at level 11. So if you raise that 5 more levels to 16, how many would that get you? It would get you 7d4 plus 7. That's it. Still what? Still does what it does. But it's a swift action, means you have to be in control of the character. So while you can cast it on you or your team, fine. You can't cast it on a pet that you can't control, because they'll never discharge the spell. Because you have to specifically activate it, quote unquote, as a swift action. It says it can discharge the rune as a swift action. So you have to be able to control the character that has this at some point. But again, you can do that on an animal companion. You can do that on a teammate. You can do that on yourself. And yeah, it does okay damage, but that's all it does. It's a one and done. This is less damage, or at least probably comparable damage, to say it that way, to Shocking Grasp. Shocking Grasp was level 1. This is level fucking 2. What the hell? And again, you see that sexy duration go, oh, but I have the buff. No, it's not a buff. It is a charge that sticks on your weapon, and you have to wait to discharge it. And again, you can discharge it at any time. That means the duration is over. It's a one and done. It's a way for you to pre-buff up your weapon. How would I use this if I wanted it? I'd put it on, say, like a character that I like casting my friendly creature, like Valerie, a fighter up front who has no spells, no buffs, no real good things other than the gear that I give her. I'd buff her with this so like when she's trying to finish off the troll, she's probably got a pretty good swing as a fighter. Here, activate your swift action. Poof. The next time she hits him, it's going to fucking discharge the rune, and he'll take a solid amount of fire damage and might kill that troll. You could see that would be a good way of using it, but that's about the only real reason for this. Otherwise, I'd say steer clear. Flurry of Snowballs, on the other hand. This one's fucking amazing. Decent sized cone, good range on it, no less. It's a save or half damage spell, again, reflex problem, but no spell resistance. It's cold damage, so again, if you're a cold dragon type, you're doing more damage with it. You gotta love that. It's not teammate friendly, but again, you can really line it up nicely and hit a lot of dudes for some solid fuck you damage. And then no spell resistance is the real saving grace here. Force Sword, another new spell. This one's weird. It says you can cast this on a friendly creature. Be aware that the friendly creature has to be able to wield a longsword. So obviously don't give it to your pet. Don't give it to a teammate that can't use longswords. Like someone that's like a wizard that has just simple weapons. They can't wield a longsword. So why would you give this to them? So give it to someone else. Give it to you. How I would use this would be more of a pen and paper spell for me. Anyway, this would be something that, my DMs are dicks. And I am too. But it's one of those where we'll routinely throw the party in a fucking dungeon. You stripped of all your weapons, all your gear, all your spell books. But you have your spells that you memorized. Have you memorized Force Sword for the day? Until you cast that shit. Now when you're, trying to leave the dungeon, in your fucking rotted, rat-infested loincloth, you got your piss bucket in the corner, you fucking, getting ready to be taken to your execution, and instead of you jumping the guards with nothing but like the rotted bones of the guys that died in the fucking cell with you, you can cast this spell, and now at least you have a magical longsword in your fucking hand. Okay, that's cool. It gets better than that. It scales. It starts off as a +1 longsword, eventually +2, finally +3. And as a Magus, you can buff it still. Remember, you can buff any weapon that you have in your little fingies, right? That includes this little fucker. So we can make it a +5 weapon if I so choose. I can make it a Bane weapon. I can make it on fire. I can do all that cool shit that a Magus can do with that fucking longsword. And, wait, it gets better. The longsword is considered force damage. So it's not physical damage. So if you're coming across someone that's like a golem, or someone that has like stone skin on, that's physical damage they absorb, not force damage. This thing cuts right through that shit like butter. And that's fucking cool. I dig this spell. I would not necessarily pick this on a Magus build. I might pick it on like a Sword Saint build, just for the fact that it does that force damage. And I would, you have to make sure though that your primary weapon hand is free. So you'd literally, you know how you have 4 weapon choices, right? You have 4 slots to alternate between. Just make sure one of them's empty. Make sure it's empty when you cast it. It'll appear in your fucking hand, and it's a weird looking, glowing fucking sword. And it's cool. And then you buff it from there, and you go to town, swinging on bad guys. And it lasts for a good long while. It's a solid weapon. Frigid Touch. This is the vanilla version spell that came with the game for level 2 for Magus. This is the one that you channel through your weapon, and it crits when the weapon crits. Solid damage, and you may say, well, now that you have an intensified Shocking Grasp, because you're probably gonna, right? And I would. Why would you ever want this spell? It does less damage at 4d6 versus Shocking Grasp, which does 5d6, and if you intensify it, which now it would be a level 2 spell if you intensified it, does 10d6. Clearly it's superior to this, and yes, you're right. However, some things are immune to electric, and this thing has other effects. Not only does it does cold damage, but there's no saving throw for this part. It staggers the target, guaranteed for 1 round. Well, partial guarantee. 1, you can miss. 2, they could be immune to stagger. So that's always the thing. Or immune to magic. Or have spell resistance. So there's lots of ways around it. But if they're not having any of those problems, they are staggered. And remember what stagger does. They can't move and attack in the same round. They can do one or the other, not both. So that's powerful. And notice the better part. If this weapon crits, or spell crits, then it actually lasts for 1 minute of them being staggered. And now they're fucked. So this is actually a lot better than you think. And again, this is another one that an Eldritch Archer with that specific Magus Arcana can channel it through their weapon. So again, Frigid Touch at range. Pretty freaking baller. And again, I would still pick it. In every Magus build, this would be something I'd still pick. Even the Eldritch Scions. Glitter Dust. This is my second of my 3 crowd control abilities, remember? A little sip of coffee. This one's amazing. Again, no spell resistance. It's a theme. Notice that it has two effects. One effect that has nothing to do with the saving throw. You basically coat them with dust. The dust gives them a -40 penalty to their stealth. Remember, all Vanish, Invisibility, or Greater Invisibility really do is give them 20 extra points to stealth, and they are quote-unquote invisible. But if they have a -40 to stealth, I can spot them better. So can my team. So can our pets. You see the appeal. And that always happens. It's not teammate friendly, so be very careful with this. However, if they fail their save, this is the second part it does, it gets the dust in their eyes and they get blinded by it. So that's a penalty for those bad guys now. Now, it's a save or suck spell every round at that point. So until they make their check, they're blinded. They will check every round to like wipe the dust clear, I guess, if you will. But again, decent size burst, really good range, really indispensable if you're fighting invisible targets. However, it's not the same as the best spell that would do something similar. The one that you would want to have, and sadly we don't have access to. There's one Magus that can, but not us. It's called Fairy Fire. That one's fucking amazing. It's not quite as big of a burst as this 10-foot burst in Glitter Dust. But what Fairy Fire does is it outlines invisible targets with Fairy Fire, hence the name. It doesn't hurt them, doesn't do damage. It just makes them glow. And it's one of those where it bypasses invisibility in a way that, just like Displacement and Blur, where they have that concealment, the concealment's gone. That does not happen with this spell. So this is not as good as Fairy Fire. So if you're thinking it's just Fairy Fire, but it makes them blind, it's not. It's not remotely the same thing. It's extremely similar, same use. You know, if it's a stealthing or invisible target, you want to hit them with either of those spells. If I had a choice, I'd use Fairy Fire. We don't have that choice. This is still a great spell, though. And again, if I don't get it, I feel bad, but I almost always try to get it and Grease and Web. But if something has to fall along the way, honestly, it'd be Web, quite frankly. Ice Slick. This one is it's a new spell, so this one's very new to me. This one feels to me like it's a better version of Grease, because that's really what it is. It does cold damage on the initial round that you cast it, so don't be standing in the AoE when it does. It's the same burst size, that 5-foot burst. It's not very big. Cast it in a doorway. Again, if you're immune to ground-based effects, after you cast the spell, you can run over it and it never bothers you one bit. But the bad guys slippy slide on this shit. And the spell resistance is applicable, but only for the cold damage. After that, the falling prone from walking across the ice is basically, again, it's like Grease, but cold damage. And that's the best way for me to talk about this spell. So it's good, but I haven't really had a chance to toy with it just yet. Invisibility, again, just like Vanish, just better duration. And again, you are invisible, but Vanish does the same thing. You are invisible. You just get a +20 to your stealth and all the bonuses for being invisible. You can sneak attack with it, but only once, because the minute you attack, it's gone. And again, the duration is nice. So I like this one for if I were to like stealth an area. And I don't mean that as like in a stealth video game setting where you would stealth the whole fucking map and then like, peace out, I stole all your shit and I'm gone. No, like I would check out the map, find out where the big clusters of bad guys, and say, oh, I'm not going in there until everyone rests, takes a knee, heals up, whatever, buffs up. So again, that's how I would use this type of spell. Mirror Image. Now this is a nice one. And people on forums are always arguing with me about whether Mirror Image is better than Blur. And they mean well. And I haven't done the math, so again, I'll be honest that Mirror Image probably is better. However, Blur never wears off. Well, it has a duration, but it doesn't just fall off because they hit all your goddamn illusionary doubles. Mirror Image can break in the very first combat round if you're just bad at getting hit. However, ways around that is having things like Blur on your character, or Displacement, or having a high fucking armor class. And again, high concealment bonus, high armor class stacks with the effect of Mirror Image then in a really, really nice way. That's why I say I like Blur and I like Mirror Image. I'll grab both on every build, more likely than not, because it really is that cool. The problem that people have with this one, and I do too, I routinely forget this, so I want to point out why I think I get infuriated with the usefulness of this spell, and then I find out that it's useless all at once. It's this little trick right here. If the attack misses by 5, the bad guy's shooting at you, let's say, misses by 5 or less, didn't hit you, it still strips away a figment. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, with an armor class that's so fucking high, like, these motherfuckers can't hit me unless they hit a 20. Fuck you, I'm awesome, yeah. And then suddenly, like, there goes an image, there goes another image, there goes another image. Like, what the fuck's going on? It's because they're hitting like 15, 16, 17, and that's good enough. Well, shit. So that's the trick here. So know that your armor class can be good, but it's not the end-all, be-all of existence to protect the mirror images. Concealment, on the other hand, remember, that's the first thing that gets checked. So if you have blur or, God forbid, displacement on, 50% chance to miss you. And again, if they fail that, they don't even roll for the armor class at that point. They're just like, nope, you missed. Bye. And your mirror image is perfect. It just sits there just being all pretty. So that's my advice to you. Have concealment of some kind. Blur, worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you ought to have displacement. Notice that it does not work if you're invisible, because so are your images, which it kind of makes sense when you think of it that way. Also doesn't work if they're hitting you with AoE or stuff that doesn't have to target you or stuff that's auto hit like magic missile. It's gonna fucking hit. So this isn't a catch for everything. Neither is blur, but the two of them together are really solid protection for your character. Molten Orb. This is piss. Don't take it. All right, wait. Let's positives. Rather than positives, we want to talk about positives. Okay. It can crit, because there's a roll check, but it's not a race spell. It's considered a bomb spell, kind of like an Alchemist's Flask or the bombs that Jubilos chucks. There's a splash damage as a result, which means you can hurt yourself or your team with this. So this is a bad idea, unless you're using turn-based combat, of course. It can sneak attack because there's a hit check, so there is that. It does damage over time. For anyone that took damage in the first spike, they do 1d6 of damage for 1d3 rounds. That could be okay. It's not amazing for a level 2 spell, is my real problem. And I'm not a fan of stuff that's this lame ass splash damage. If the AoE was bigger, or if I could increase the damage beyond the 2d6 for the first guy to get hit, not counting, of course, crits or sneak attacks, I'd like this spell more. But it's kind of lame. Other than that, I mean, if you're like a fire dragon type, this is okay, I guess. I'm just not a fan. Savage Maw, new spell. We've talked about this one once before, I think, for the War Priest. It's an amazing spell, especially for a Magus, because it gives you an extra attack. They bleed on a crit, and you can cancel it at any time by doing a massive AoE roar. It basically demoralizes the target, which is nothing more than another intimidation check. Anyone within the AoE, that's bad guys, enemies of you, will do a intimidation check against them to see if they're shaken. And if they're shaken, then all these penalties apply. -2 to attacks, to their saves, to their skill checks, and their ability checks. And because they're shaken, and this is a staple for my Eldritch Scion builds, if I'm doing Shatter Defenses for a feat pick, remember, if they're shaken, anyone that's shaken to me, all my melee attacks, well, all my attacks for that matter, are considered targeting someone that's flat-footed. So that means they have probably piss all for armor now, which is really nice. So this is a nice way for you to set up the intimidation of just, rah, fear me, and then you just bludgeon the fuck out of them with your weapon. So again, some serious fun to be had. Remember though, this is a natural weapon, so anything that buffs that gets a buff. Notice that because it's a natural weapon, some spells like those auras we talked about, means you're taking damage because you're gnawing on the bastard, which means you're gnawing on the aura. Like Vampire Shadow Shield, Fire Shield, the Sunburst Shield, whatever the fuck it's called. All those, again, this is a personal, you're getting up and in their grill, and now you're going to take damage for doing so. So that kind of sucks. But again, you have the control of your character. You can roar instead and biting the fucker if you know that it's going to be a problem. Yeah, it means you cancel the spell, but I'd rather do that than take damage. So it is fiddly, but it is cool, and I do dig it. And personally, I know this is what it makes it look like in the picture. You don't actually see anything. The attack itself, if you want to know that the attack is working, the animation is you rock backwards and then you rock forward with your whole body, and that's you biting. You're lunging to the fucker to bite him. That's what the animation looks like. Having said that, in my own little head canon, I picture that Savage Maw splits my cheeks up the sides towards my ear, like basically saws my face in half, and then lines my mouth with fucking razors so that I can like open and close like a goddamn bear trap on something. That's how I have it in my head, and that sounds like it'd be fucking cool. And it's Transmutation spell, and I love my Transmutation spells, so I dig this spell. Scorching Ray, now again another vanilla spell, amazing spell. 3 attacks in 1 combat round from this spell. Even Eldritch Archers can use this to channel it through their weapon, but the very first arrow that they shoot lands all 3 shots, I believe. So if you shoot once, you shoot your arrow, and then beam, beam, beam hits, and then you keep shooting your arrows if you still have the ability to do so, or whatever ranged weapon we're talking about. But this is decent. 4d6 of damage per smack. Downside is it has to be the same target, unlike the pen and paper version, which I think you can split your focus. But I'm okay with that, because some guys just need to fucking die, quite frankly. And again, it can sneak attack, it can crit if it's the ray spell itself. If it's channeled through the weapon, it can only crit. But it's still cool, and it's a really decent spell, and this is one that most people shoot for. Stone Call. It's complete another piss. Alright, it's not. It's no spell resistance. It does physical damage only, and it's only 2d6 of that. But the AoE on it's fucking huge, which to me is also a problem, because if I can't see what I'm hitting, I may have alerted an entire room of bad guys that I didn't want to alert to my presence, where they just got fucking hit with pebbles to the head and got pissed, came out and started stabbing me in the face. Fuck that. But it does set up difficult terrain, and again, if you or your team are immune to difficult terrain, there's another massive AoE that you can dance around or run through, and with the buggy AI in this game, you can lead them on the merry chase of just running away and shooting them, and they're just kind of, okay, I guess we're going this way now, and they just kind of fucking wander in a big fucking circle of stupid because of the difficult terrain. So it can be used for some fun. I'm not that patient. I mean, let's just say it. I could definitely cheese some serious fights with this, but it's still one of those where I'm like, nah, fuck it, I don't care. And it's only really good in areas where you have that really big area that you can't run around or run through. Because if it's like in a little tiny room, who gives a shit? They can still reach you just because they're moving at half fucking speed. I mean, you're within 5 fucking feet of them. They're just going to go, oop, okay, and stab, stab, stab. So, yeah. Again, it's okay. It's just not a good spell. Summon 6 golems, noob spell. This one's cool. Requires material component of a short sword. And let's be real clear on this. You need a short sword. Not a magic short sword. Not a masterwork short sword. Not a damaged piece of junk short sword. No, you need a short sword. Period. They're fucking cheap. Buy one at Oleg's. Once you have one, you cast this spell. It summons 6 goblins, like it says. They fight. They suck. They die. They leave their gear, which includes a bunch of short swords. So you can pick that shit up, and now you have infinite use of short swords. Sell off all but one, and always keep 1 or 2, whatever, on your person so you have access to this spell. I would take this spell, and honestly, I would take this because this is one of the only summons we get as a Magus as we level up. Not counting the quote-unquote free ones from the wizard spell book that you can get at like level 19 for most of the Magus builds. No, this is one you can actually realistically get early levels. And yes, they suck, but they set up flanking. They're a body that's getting hit that's not you. They can do a lot of cool things, and again, pretty happy with them. And I don't remember how long they last. I want to say it's like a minute, because it doesn't have any duration listed here, but they don't last long. And they die easily too. That's another big thing. But again, like I said, they can set up flanking, which sets up sneak attack in this game. There's a lot of cool stuff they can do with these little fuckers. And then honestly, you can make some money off of their gear, which sounds silly because it's not that much, but you can do it. I mean, fucking every fight you summon these bastards, steal their gear, take it back to Oleg's and sell it eventually. And you're selling all of it except for one of them short swords, so you can always recast them again. You're selling like leathers, I think they leave behind, or padded armor, and like 5 of the 6 short swords you're going to sell, and you're going to keep 1. You'll make some money. It's kind of weird to think of it that way, but hey, it's not my fault. That's the way they made the game. Telekinetic Strikes. This one's decent. This is the one that, in my head canon. How do I think of this spell? So, if you guys ever seen that movie with, I want to say his name is Chris Evans, the guy that plays Captain America. He's in a lot of sci-fi movies where he has powers. Totally dig that guy. He's got to be a comic book geek. Anyway, in Push, he's a telekinetic. And he starts off sucking wind. Like his telekinesis is so weak he can barely control like the roll of the die. So like he's rolling dice, gambling, and trying to like fake it. When he uses telekinesis, roll a natural 6, fuck you, I win, give me money. He's routinely bad at this. By the end of the movie, his telekinesis is so powerful that he's doing like this thing where he like buffs up, like he charges his fist like this, where he's punching for telekinetic damage. Only instead of doing 1d4 force damage, he's like punching dudes across the fucking ring. It's funny as shit. But that's what I think about when I think about this spell. And this one again works on unarmed attacks or natural weapons. Remember that spell we just talked about, Savage Maw? That's a natural weapon attack. So if you have that on and you cast this should buff it and give you extra force damage on those bites. If you're a dragon disciple or a dragon bloodline, even for that matter, or I think even the abyssal bloodline gets it where they get claws. Those are natural weapons. If you switch over to having that toggle on, you cast this spell on yourself, your claw attacks will do extra force damage on a strike. That's fucking cool. I'm just saying, it's not amazing, but it's pretty fucking decent. And you can cast it on other people, a friendly creature, like maybe Ekindio's pet. He gets all those fucking bite attacks and swipe attacks or whatever, like a wolf does. Maybe if you have a, not the mastodon, what's the other one called? The saber-toothed tiger, whatever the fuck that's called. I just can't think of the name. Smilodon, there it is. Jesus. You have a Smilodon, you cast it on that little fucker. They get like 5 attacks in a fucking round. They get claw, 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 and bite. And now you're adding 1d4 of force damage to each of those things. Fucking sounds cool to me. Just saying. Pretty fucking cool spell. It's not amazing, but it's decent. And this would be one of the ones that if I was playing like a monk dip, like I was Eldritch Scion 19 and one level of Scaled Fist Monk where I'm trying to monk it up and punchy, this would be one of my spells. Because why not add force damage to all your fucking hits for like 19 minutes a day? Fuck yeah. It'd be awesome. Web, last spell to talk about today. We're almost done, guys. This is my last crowd control spell that I think of my 3. And again, Ice Slick might make the list now, because again, it's basically grease on crack. So there's like 4 spells technically that are good crowd control. This one though is the really good one, and I like it. I routinely don't pick it, and I know that sounds stupid. It's because usually I'm tight on picks. I really have no choice. Glitter Dust is just better. Web is great though. Don't kid yourself. It's a big AoE burst. If you're immune to ground-based effects, you're immune to the spell. That's fucking awesome. It's not teammate friendly, so again, be careful with that. But if they're in the spell, whether it's this round or the next round or the round after that, so long as the spell's up and it lasts for a long fucking time, they're constantly checking to see if they're grappled. The grapple effect is listed here, just so you know what it is. If they're grappled, they have a massive penalty to dexterity. They have a decent penalty to their attack rolls, and if they're using dexterity for those attack rolls, there's even more of a penalty. So when it's a -2 to everything, -4 for those dex-based attacks. Like if they're bowmen shooting at you and they're fucking grappled, they're in a massive fuck you penalty. They have a penalty to their combat maneuver checks. So again, if you're trying to trip them or bull rush them or whatever you do with your combat maneuvers, they're at a penalty. Then, because they're at a penalty for dex, that means their armor went down. Then their reflexes went down because their dexterity went down. Then you get the idea. They're fucking boned. Yes, you and your team could be too. This is why you hate this spell when it's used against you. But if you're immune to ground-based effects, like if you have those pretty wings, this shit's nothing. And this is amazing. And it's so big that again, you can run through it with that wings on, not affecting you, get from one side to the other, and the AI is buggy as hell, and they'll run into this every fucking time and do la-di-da, and oh, I'm stuck, and you just sit there at the other side and they go ha ha ha, and you shoot them with arrows. And it's fucking amazing. It's an amazing spell, and it checks every round. So even if they make the check, they're also in difficult terrain or whatever, so they move slower. Even if they make the check. Of course, freedom of movement would make them immune. I keep forgetting to point shit like that out. But again, the point's still the same. There's a lot of good things that happen when they're stuck in a web spell. And again, it really sets them up for a lot of other stuff. That penalty to dexterity when they are grappled is obvious too. They literally, the webs like creep up their body and just lock them in place. So it's pretty obvious who's grappled and who's not. Okay. So again, if you want to hit somebody with another spell that, oh, there's a reflex save. Yeah, but they're at a -2 penalty to that reflex save guaranteed if they're grappled, bitch. Fuck yeah. Perfect opportunity. You can have some serious fun here. Just saying. And it is a good spell, if not a great spell. Compare it to Grease and compare it to Glitter Dust. Like I said, if I can get all 3, I do. If I can't, something has to fall along the way. I like Grease because it's low level. I like Glitter Dust because it can light up invisible targets for me early game. That's nice. That's real nice. And the AoE blind is really nice too. It doesn't mean it'll always land, but it's still fucking cool. Web is great, but of those 3, Web is the one that I would have to kick to the curb. And that it kills me to do it every time, but it's one of those where I'm like, I need to be able to see invisible. Casting a web on the ground, yes, the invisible will get caught in it, and yes, if they get grappled, I'll see the webs go up, so it'll be obvious where they're grappled, but it's still, they are invisible. That doesn't mean I can see them, so that's a bummer. That's why Glitter Dust is so useful. If I had, I will say this, if I had an Aesimer, or is it a Tiefling? One of the two has the ability to cast once a day Glitter Dust. It's like level 0 for them, but so what? It's still once a day they have it for free. If I had that kind of character, I'd take Glitter Dust to the curb and then I'd take Web. because I still have at least one use of Glitter Dust. And you're not going to fucking fight invisible dudes every fucking battle. So you get into an area, you're like, oh shit, there are guys that are invisible here. I got Glitter Dust, click, done, and I only need it like once a day, usually anyway. So fuck it. And then I would go with Web. That would be the only time I would do that. But with that, that's all this video is. I know it's been long. I apologize. It's because we're going through so many spells. It'll be faster when we go to level 3 and 4, and then of course 5 and 6. But they are coming. I am working on a couple of unmodded videos. Someone specifically pointed out that I don't have an unmodded video for Valerie and Amiri. I think that's it. Maybe there's another one too. But I told them that I would try to give them at least one video this week. So I'll probably do Valerie next. Then I'll probably do 3 and 4. Then I'll probably do Amiri next. And then I'll do 5 and 6. It'll be probably the order. Unless someone else reminds me of something else I never got to do. But with that, my name is Brother Mean. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. Is there a different use for some of these spells that I'm missing completely? Or did I say something wrong? It happens. I do apologize if I do get stuff wrong. And I certainly like to correct myself. But feel free to post that down below. You all have a happy holiday season. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye now.